Insights is an effort from members and supporters of the VenusProject.com resource-based economy and is not an official spokesperson, representative, or act in any official capacity, and serves only to encourage, support, and motivate other TVP activists.
Hi everybody. we're here in Lansing, Iowa, and this is we're going to use this on the Activism Insights. This is the show that's dedicated to you out there in the field, who are delivering and working very hard in wherever area that you're in to help deliver the message and solutions of the VenusProject.com's resource-based economy. I have a wonderful guest who's a dear friend of mine who I've known for many years. I'd like to introduce her, Edna Esfeld.
Hello.
And Edna was a wonderful friend of my dear mother's. You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, you're a peace, you know, maker, and you do these things. And I'm a reflection of my indoctrination. I'm a reflection, as we all know, conditions create behavior. And my mother was just a wonderful, dear, sweet, very peaceful woman.
I second and third that.
And
she
so
was my other mother.
And so Edna's just
raised 6 children completely on her own. She was just really one of those model mothers.
Absolutely.
That everybody wished they had a mother like Julie, like your mother.
I was very fortunate. Yes, any good in me is a reflection of her. And the reason that we have Edna on is Edna is an activist. She's taken her life and she's doing things with it. She has incredible purposes she's given herself to make the world a better place. And she's a writer. She's a publisher. She has written a wonderful book. Let's take a look at it. It's called Brainwashed, Fighting for the Enemy. Now, we're all familiar with conditions and indoctrination. People reflect, and people neither good nor bad. They're perfectly suited for the environment or the indoctrination that they've sustained. Her book goes into great depth and detail about her father and the World War, and I wanted to bring her on and let her talk about the book. Maybe you can start with, you know, introducing yourself, what part of the world. Well, I might add that she, like me, travels extensively, goes throughout America. She does book signings and introduces this book and her work all over America. And
well, I'm getting to the point of book signings again soon. Yes, I did do my first book signing in Jackson, Michigan, where I was raised. We settled from Detroit. My grandfather immigrated to Detroit, Michigan in the 1920s, 1927, I believe.
The Roaring 20s, huh?
The Roaring 20s. And he ended up getting a job, a very good job, at Ford Motor Company in the 20s, and as an engineer. Well, soon Dr. Porsche came over to the United States in the 30s because he had this wonderful grand idea to build a factory for what we now know as the Volkswagen.
Wow.
And he came over to recruit German Americans. These are Germans who knew the assembly line very well.
Wow.
Hitler
Which still relatively new assembly line, the whole
Hitler
concept.
Exactly. Hitler had heard about this mass assembly line, 24-hour shift, and he Hitler wanted to build factories because, as you know, during the 30s, Europe was in a depression. Germany was in a terrible depression.
Yeah.
And when Hitler came to power, Germans were literally starving. And so this was one way he wanted to put Germans back to work, believe it or not.
Sure.
There is that side of the story.
Of course.
So he sent Porsche over to the United States to recruit German Americans who were familiar with the assembly line. My grandfather was one of the 21st German Americans to go back to Germany on a 2-year contract, paid for by the German government, housing paid for, everything paid for, to build the first Volkswagen factory, which is now in Wolfsburg, Germany. So he took his family. My father was a 9-year-old boy at the time.
Golly.
And his other 2 siblings, my aunt was just born, and all of them packed everything up, including my grandmother, my grandfather, and my father and his 2 younger brother and sister, and they went to Germany for 2 years. And it was a good opportunity for my grandfather. He thought that that would be something
Yes.
so grand to help build a factory
Yes.
for an automobile.
Right.
And so the story takes off from there, and my father ends up as a mandatory in Germany during the time. Every young boy at the age of 10 had to be part of an organization called the Jungvuk. The Jungvuk was like a disciplinary type school for boys. It wasn't military. And so the parents thought this was great. This was one of Hitler's own ideas as to help discipline boys. Well, then at the age of 14, it's also mandatory that boys at the age of 14 were entered into the Hitler Youth. Now, this was towards the end of the war. It was in 1943, I believe.
Wow.
The war was going strong in
Golly.
Europe. World War II had already broke out. My grandparents were stuck during the war.
God.
They were stripped of their citizenship. They could not come back. So what ended up as a 2-year contract to work for the factory ended up as a 6-year war contract. They had to do what they were asked to do. Otherwise, the consequences would have been imprisonment, whatever.
Unbelievable.
My father then going to school, he also went to school, and the schools at that time too were pretty much pro-Hitler. The teachers were thought they were disciplining their children, and but he was plucked out of class at the age of 16 and became a flak helper, flak helper at the age of 16, helped loading the bombs into the anti-aircraft missiles. And my father, at that time, he was 14 or 15, and he was brainwashed at that then. He was ready to die for the Fuhrer.
Yes.
And you know, again, my grandmother was tried everything she could to keep him out of those groups, and there was no way.
No.
They threatened by putting my family into face the courts. You know, you can face the courts.
Yeah.
So the story continues from there. Brainwashing. I decided to name the book Brainwashed. I had help with my editor fighting for the enemy. But my father, they managed to survive without a scar. And they lived in a city that's now called Wolfsburg, but it wasn't called Wolfsburg until after the war. But Hitler had built a city for the factory. Okay, this was right before the war. The city was built for the factory workers.
Wow.
He envisioned a factory that was going to be 10 times bigger than the Ford Motor Company in Detroit.
The latest technology.
And sure
in
enough, that
manufacturing,
factory to this
assembly.
day, yes, with all the assembly and everything. I mean, they were getting equipment in left and right before the war. Well, that all stopped when the war broke out with Britain and France. Before the United States even got into the war, that factory turned into a repair and manufacturing some of the war materials.
Aircraft or what?
Yeah,
Who knows?
they repaired
Okay.
a lot of the Luftwaffe aircraft. They did those repairs. And then some other, the Kubelwagen. Are you familiar with the Kubel?
No.
The first amphibian Jeep was built in that factory.
Wow.
They stopped the production of the first 100 Volkswagens, and they built the first amphibian Jeep for the war.
Somebody had to engineer all that and test
was
it. And
sent. That's right. And there really was no question that Dr. Porsche really believed that there wasn't going to be war. He used to tell all his engineers, including my grandpa, Henry Esfeld, that there was not going to be a war. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Well, they were sorely needed to continue. After the 2 years was up on the contract, they asked all the engineers to stay on a little bit longer, and they did. They didn't see the war of clouds. None of the, it's just, they were already so involved in their work building this factory. So I don't want to, spend hours talking about the book, but
Fascinating.
If you have any questions, let me know. It is a story about my family. It's a story about how quickly fascism, authoritarianism, all this stuff can happen anywhere in the world. Can touch families. You don't have to be directly, living in a war zone to be part of a terrible war.
Got you. Yeah.
You can. It gets passed down in generations and easily, and what the damage that gets done is one thing, but to undo the damage that has been done from war it'll take decades. It'll take several generations.
Generations, okay.
So.
Right, we know that. As values begin to evolve and understandings become known. Better perception of what reality is. Yes, it's a very big book.
But it's now the neat thing about this book, since you brought up how big it is, it's big because we double spaced.
Make it easy.
That was kind of accidental. So it's actually double spaced. It's very easy to read.
Very.
But it's got great views on Amazon, and I feel very grateful that it has, because this was 7 years. It took 7 years.
I just can't imagine.
To write this book. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Let me tell you.
And let's look at a picture real quick as you tell us more about it. This is her father here, and we can see part of the manufacturing. And there's actually some photographs that you have been able to retain from all these years.
Yes.
In the book.
My father finally, let go of some of these photographs. We had a few growing up on the wall when he became an American soldier. There's a part 1 and part 2 to this story.
Tell us more.
Part 2 is after the war. They finally came back to America, to Detroit, to start their life all over again, literally.
What years were that? Do you remember?
47. They were able
back
to come
to Detroit.
Back to Detroit.
When it was still a heyday.
And my father ended up getting an apprentice job. The old friends of my grandparents, my grandmother was very sociable in Detroit. And so the old friends helped them put their life back together as best as they could. And my grandfather ended up getting a job back at Ford. Not the same good job he had, but Henry Ford felt really bad. What happened for him. After the word got out, what happened to the family. He ended up getting a job back at Ford Motor Company. So they were really blessed about that. You pretty much lose everything in 6 years, and then you come back and you get a job. You get a job back at the company that you really loved, and he was climbing the ladder for Ford Company at the time.
Wow.
So anyway, so the part 2 in this book continues, where my father comes back. He gets an apprentice job in engineering. He's 18 now. His life of high school is totally. He has to take night classes. He didn't have a normal junior high school like all of us have, most of us, and he ends up taking night school. So he thinks he's getting, he's going to get somewhere, pretty quickly. He saved enough money to buy his first car. It was a Ford, of course.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden he gets a letter from Uncle Sam in 1950, I think it was. So 2 years after they come back from Germany, from the horrible World War II, he gets a letter from Uncle Sam. He's drafted in the Korean War. He has to report. So he ends up becoming an American soldier. He lucked out. He didn't have to go to Korea. That's in the story. It's a very interesting part of the story that, and he ends up back in Germany, Luke. As an American soldier.
Whoa.
And that's where he meets my mother.
Okay.
So there's some romance. There's some good stuff in this story. There's romance there, and how he
real world experiences, by the way, not
redeem. He felt that this was a good way to redeem himself. Going back to Germany as an American soldier, because of all those years fighting on the Russian front as a German soldier during
And you had
the
told
war.
me some stories about.
He was ready to die for the Führer.
Sure, of course, indoctrination and brainwashing.
Yes, and then his loyalty started coming into question when he was in a foxhole for 10 days across the Urbe, don't mean to mispronounce the German river there, where heavy fighting was taking place with the Russians. And then his loyalty started coming into question. Where is help? What's going on? This is towards the end of the war. And he realizes that this is falling apart, and everything that Hitler promised everybody is not at all for the better, you know.
The reality.
Yeah, the reality of it all. So,
when he suffered some terrible...
He goes back as an American soldier, and he ends up really doing some good deeds for the American commanders, the lieutenant and stuff. So.
And he had experienced some just unbelievable and hard to fathom what that experience would be like. One of the incidences that we had discussed is when he was in the forest and the unit came upon just some civilians.
Yes, his unit was in the forest, and some civilians were fleeing from somewhere somewhat. They were dressed in civilian clothes. It was, I believe, it was several men and a young boy. And sure enough, they were shot point blank, you know, in the head, and my father had to, and his other comrades had to dig the...
They watched it all.
They had to dig the graves for them. And,
gosh.
You know, they were, these civilians were considered deserters and of the army, and it just, you know...
So whatever title they were given, they were combatants, and they executed innocent...
Right, and my father at those moments thought that these civilians, the men were around his father, because they could have been my father that they're shooting. So, yeah.
And that was just one isolated. There were many different instances.
And
these are outlined in the book. Some of his unbelievable.
The book is based on his memoir and his letters. I received tons and tons of letters from my father.
Wow.
After I asked him maybe 5 questions, and I received, 20 pages at a time of answers.
Fantastic.
And so based on his experience during World War II, and then, like I said, the Korean War, the forgotten war. He had to go back to Germany as an American soldier
after all what he had already experienced.
Yeah.
And this is the year 2017. This month is, we're in July 2017, and your father's still alive. You just traveled across the states and visited with him?
That's right. He just turned 90. He's got literally next to nothing in hearing, but he's lost most of his eyesight. And he has slowed down a lot in just in the last 6 months, believe it or not. He's slowed down a lot. But yes, we had a wonderful 90th birthday party.
Wonderful, fantastic.
And
and your travels
he's still kicking.
You just got to love that. In fact, she stopped off. Bless your heart. She stopped off to see me. We haven't seen each other for many, many years. Oh no, this is actually getting that
this
too.
Is up close and personal, isn't it?
Well, it's actually sees like 180 degrees.
Well, since we had the same mother, I guess you could. I'll let you get away with the up close.
And so she's on her way to see her mother.
Yes, my mother lives
who's also still alive.
My mother's a World War II survivor too. My father met my mother in Germany. She was born and raised in Germany. She lost her mother during an American air raid.
Unbelievable.
But yes, she lives in Michigan. She's going to be 89. So yes, I travel back and forth right now. I'm living out of I'm living mobile. I'm living out of my fifth wheel now.
Fantastic.
I had a business for 34 years, and I'm in the middle of transitioning out of that and looking for something a little more meaningful.
Good for you. Well,
nonprofit. I'm just like you, Luke. I'm ready to do what I can to help the next person down the road.
I'm so thankful.
That has
the years you spent on just doing the research on this book. 7?
Yeah, 7
years. I can't, people think when they see a book, they have no idea the amount of research, the amount of tears and struggle to condense it.
One thing I didn't write in the introduction of the book was that there were 6 months my father and I didn't talk writing this book. Because we had a disagreement on how, on something about the book, and that just happens, and especially if it's a family member, we finally came to terms, and we saw each other, eye to eye, and but yeah, it is very difficult, especially to write about your own family and their own hardships.
Yet he saw what good could come from these horrible experiences. He could see where it helps people to understand that. And as we all know, indoctrination, people do things and go along with things that they find justification based on what they've been told, sometimes even reward.
Well, what Hitler knew, and it's, you know, any psychiatrist or therapist out there will tell you, it is so easy to influence children. Children believe anything they're told.
Right.
And Hitler knew this, and this is why there was the Hitler Youth. You know, these boys, these young boys were easily
impressionable.
Yes.
Yes. And want to do good. They want to, you know, if they have role models, as today we have role models for a lot of young men in America, sports where it's okay to throw the ball and hit the pitcher. I mean, you know, competitive.
Well, it's not okay, but you know, they still try to get away with it, don't they?
No, and you know, you stopped off to see me. I might also say that we had worked together back in, what, 70, no, 89, I don't remember, what, 94 I think it was. I did a nightclub dance scene. A lot of people know that I produce videos and documentaries, but I also did a bunch of work in dance. And one time we had to film a nightclub scene.
And I remember where it was. I was living in Canyon Country, California.
Yes.
And your mother was living just a couple of blocks away from me. And we'd already become really tight. And I became her other daughter. And she had invited me to Bakersfield, where you were living at the time, Bakersfield, California, to shoot a video, a dance video, because she knew that I had taken line dancing
You were wonderful.
Oh my God, and two-stepping.
Yeah, there was like 100 extras, right? We had upstairs dance. We took over some buildings.
Yes.
And she's on. If you, we'll have a link.
We had so much fun.
Yes,
Link,
that was.
I mean, you were Luke. You were such a wonderful instructor, and taking on video shoot. You know, when you have to shoot something, that's another fun.
Yeah. It was a big event.
Responsibility.
We had a lot of fun on it. And Mom was in it too.
Yes.
And actually, this was kind of far out. It was a vehicle. During our lives, sometimes we become separate from our own relatives, and I didn't get to know much of my brothers and sisters. I left home early, and that was a vehicle. I had my younger brother Peter, who did the sound mix and provided that. I had all of that covered, and then Johnny was there.
It became a family affair, didn't it?
It sure did, with new family members and everything.
I know, huh?
So we had a lot of fun in the past.
Yeah.
But I just think it's so important that and appreciate and acknowledge you for what you've done with this book, because it helps others to understand the amount of indoctrination that each one of us have suffered, that there's such a thing as indoctrination, what the effects are, and how it can coerce people into doing things. And often in war, we're not given the opportunity to even question what we're doing. You're not supposed to. There's no room for remorse or questions about whether you're doing right or wrong or why you're there. Those are not to be entertained. And this book has a wonderful outline of a real world experience of a family who came and to help and were coerced into an effort that was so inhumane. And not because any of us are good or bad, but we reflect the indoctrinations. We see that in this book is a wonderful, exemplary effort and example of just exactly that. I just think it's a big book. It's a beautifully well produced. She will be on her tour again. I followed that. And by the way, she's also an extensive traveler. She is going to be developing about her travels across America, people she's met, her experiences. It's a wonderful, exciting, and I just loved when I would see you and I'm in a new town and you would show there's a book signing and I'm at this bookstore, and it was totally far out. And so as you develop that, I would like to cover that and help others to see, so that when you enter their town, they can come by and support you and meet you.
Right. I'm in the middle of writing my first draft of my travel. So yeah.
The site.
I hope to get that. I was hoping to get it done by this June, and that certainly is taking a little bit of a back seat. But
yes.
Hopefully I'll have it done by the end of the year.
Oh, it'd be fantastic.
But I believe that everybody has a story, and
yes.
Please, if you can't write it down, talk to somebody about it. Maybe somebody can help you write it down. But share our experiences in life.
Yes.
Share it with an open mind. Share it. Somebody doesn't want to listen, talk to somebody else.
Yes.
But I believe that we are in a time now where we really need to listen to each other.
You're not kidding.
Yes.
And
yes. Stories are a great way to get people to listen.
Right.
Fun experience. It doesn't have to be a bad experience.
Learning
It can be a fun
experience for
learning
everyone.
experience.
Yes. To become more and more aware
So,
and have a wider range of thought. Well, I just love you so much.
well, I love you too.
And I just can't thank you enough for this work that you've done and make available. We'll have links. We'll have a link also. It gives a brief description of the book, goes into some detail. It's available. It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon.com.
Okay, so we'll do a link to that as well.
And
you're available for interviews
I'm-
as you travel across America. Anyone there who would also like to do an interview with her, she's always available and always at your disposal to be able to help others to learn about this. Her life is seriously involved with it, and I just thank you for what you're doing. You know, each one of us in such powerful ways, and this book is just a fantastic tool of delivering information.
Well, if
and
anything
awareness.
else, I hope it inspires. There's a nonprofit battered children's organization up in Idaho, and they have purchased the book. I do give discounts, you know, for this was a lot of, like I said, blood, sweat, and tears to put into. But
Oh my gosh!
they are going to use the book for their part of their curriculum.
Far out.
It's an inspiration
Out of sight.
for, you know,
Good.
how one person could have gone through and survived, and then turn around and have a family of their own. You know, such the worst world war we've ever had. There is inspiration in it. So
There, indeed,
that's-
and then again, as we see through the book, how children, by what they're given, and today, of course, we all emphasize critical thinking so they can examine and question. And the book is a wonderful example of that, and why you should question and why you should look into things and not just accept, and to look at the positive and negative aspects and effect for what we do and what we're exposed to.
And my last word: know your history.
Yes. And, you know,
History
check the
is a
sources.
wonderful tool for today.
Yes. Can't know where we're going unless we know where we've been, and learn from it so that we can become better. Edna, love you so much. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And we're going to also make, will we make an email available in case people wish to
Yes.
write to you?
It's edna9, Edna, EDNA, 9, NINE, at hotmail.com. I'm happy to sign a book if anybody, you know.
Far out. Well, and people
personal
want to
handbook,
support
so.
that. And then eventually you'll have a schedule of what towns you'll be going through, and so that you'll have places to stop off. Like me, she's a traveler, and it's very difficult to find places. She has a wonderful rig. I'm going to take a picture of it. She drives this gigantic rig, and it's totally far out. We're inside of it now. And so she pilots around America, and it's always nice when we can find like-minded people who have a flat area where she can park overnight as she does what she needs to do and travel. So anyone that can provide that assistance and is always
You're
willing
so
to,
sweet.
well, everyone in their way
You're so
wants to help.
Yeah.
And when opportunity is made available, people step up to the plate because they want this to be a better world. And whatever way that we can do that, we want to. So I thank you. And we'll provide the links that they can
Thank
find out
you.
more, find out about the book, find out about how they can support you, find out about book signings, and even just coming through your area, you know,
Just
that they
to
can
say
talk
hi.
with you. Absolutely.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And so this is an episode of Activism Insights. We'll provide those links. Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's a terrific book. She just did a tremendous amount of research. It's extremely interesting. And just thank you so much for this opportunity.
See you soon.
Bye.
For more information on the venusproject.com resource-based economy, log on to the venusproject.com website or check out the venusproject.com YouTube channels and Facebook pages.